Greetings, everyone. Rajee Narinesingh here, trans activist, author, and actress. So I literally wanted to beat her ass at the funeral. Yes, I did. I'm talking about my dad's funeral. So my dad passed away in 2004. Now, he and I, for most of my life, didn't really have a close relationship. I mean, I knew he loved me. I did know that. But, there were a lot of things that played into it. My dad had his own demons. My dad was an alcoholic. He did drink a lot. A functioning one, though. He went to work every day. He provided for us as a family. That was one thing that my dad mastered. He took care of his family. And so, it was a combination of things. And I really do feel that my dad had a difficult time dealing with the way I ended up, me being trans and all. And I think he saw it in me before a lot of other people saw it, before I even saw it. He probably saw it. I wasn't the son that he was expecting to get. Let's just put it that way. And I remember there was a time I couldn't do anything right for this man. I didn't eat right, talk right, walk right, breathe right. I mean, everything was an issue. I would get like all A's and have one B, and he would harp on that B, and like, how could I do that? And I remember my 8th grade graduation getting like 8 awards, and this man stormed out of the graduation. On the 8th award, I did break down and cry because I got a standing ovation. And, I am emotional and all. In retrospect, I think he had a hard time dealing with the fact that his son had, actually broken down and cried in front of all those people. I don't know. I mean, I could probably try to figure out for the rest of my life why things were the way they were and why they happened, and never really come out or come to a conclusion as to why exactly they were. It's probably, like I said earlier, a number of things that played into it. So fast forward, I grow up, I'm living my life, and we were pretty cordial with each other. I always checked in with home, with my mom and him. And I would say we were okay with each other. Never really close until 2004. And it was the summer of 2004. He was really sick. He was in the hospital. The doctor said that he probably wasn't going to make it. And I was devastated. I mean, because after it's all said and done, I mean, everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly, to the core of it, I truly love my dad, So I was checking in all the time, calling every day, checking in on his status with my mom and everything. And he pulled through. He made it. He went to rehab. He actually, he was bad because he had to end up getting his leg amputated. It wasn't a good situation, but he was living. He had made it through, and he was actually sent home, I think the end of September. So I noticed a difference after he got home. I noticed when I would call, he'd want to get on the phone more and talk with me. And we started having like deeper conversations. And there were times where I had to actually look at the phone like, is this my father talking, He said stuff to me that he had never said in my entire life. And, lovey-dovey stuff, that I wasn't used to hearing from him. But although I felt awkward, it felt good because it was always what I wanted, And so, anyway, I'm thinking about a few different conversations. I remember it was around Thanksgiving, and we were on the phone, and he starts crying. Now, I hardly ever saw my dad cry. And he's like, I want you to come home. He's like, you've been gone too long. I miss you. And, I'll tell you, I was scared to go home because I was finally getting what I wanted, and I thought, if I go home, is he really ready for all of this? I mean, he had seen pictures and everything, but it's one thing looking at pictures, it's another thing when it's live and live in color in front of you. And I told him, I said, yeah, well, I I had just started a new job, I think, at the time, and I didn't really have the time. So it wasn't that I was lying. It was true that I didn't have enough time to travel home yet. I hadn't built up enough time. So I said to him, I said, let me build up some time and I'll try and come home in the spring. And even though it was the truth, it was also the fact that I was scared to go home. I just didn't know if he could handle it. And one of the things that made me realize it was, he said to me, he says, you're my child. It is what it is. In other words, like, you are who you are. But just come home, when you come home, dress as a guy. And I'm thinking, I don't know if that's going to really help the situation any, because I think all I will look like is a woman dressed up in guy's clothing. I mean, so that was one of the things that kind of made me think, I don't know if he's really quite ready for me to come home. But anyway, he was saying, while he was crying, he said, I worked all my life so hard. And he says, who do you think I worked hard for? He said, I worked hard for you and your sister. This is your house. And it was just so touching, and I was so moved, and it was like, wow. And then fast forward a couple weeks later, this is like just before Christmas, like a couple weeks before Christmas, and we're on the phone again, and he says to me, he says, I just wish I knew you were going to be okay in this world. He says, because people can be so cruel to someone like you. And he says, me and your mom, we're not always going to be here. And I know that was the death talk. I didn't want to hear it. And I was like, yes, I know, Dad. But I kind of like tried to change the subject, quickly. But basically, he was telling me that he was worried and concerned about me being okay in this world, and that he wouldn't be around for much longer. I mean, like, I think really now in retrospect, he was feeling it. Well, a couple weeks later, on December 23rd, my dad passed away. And I was so grateful to God that I had that time with my dad before he left. I think it would have been so much harder for me if I hadn't had those moments with him, and if he hadn't been able to tell me those things. So I feel so blessed, and I'm so thankful, grateful to God for that. I did realize that not going home, I would have to live with that the rest of my life. But I think I made the decision out of love. I mean, besides the fact that I just really didn't have the time, the leave to be able to go home, I think that I was okay with it. I was at peace with it, because I knew that I stayed away out of love. Sometimes you have to kind of like stay away out of love. And I just didn't know if he could handle it all. But we had gotten to a point where I think we really truly had that full circle moment. So, okay, so now it's time for me to decide, am I going to go home for the funeral? Because I with that situation, I could get 3 days bereavement. That's all I could get. And I wanted to be there for my mom and my sister. And so I decided to go. I literally flew in the day before the funeral. I was there for the funeral, and I flew back to South Florida, USA, South Florida, the day after. So it was a quick in and out, but I just felt like I really needed to be there for them, and also for me, because, I'm a transgender person, but you know what? That was my father, and whoever had a problem with me being there, basically, excuse my language, fuck them. That was my father. I had a right to be there. So anyway, during the funeral, now mind you, a lot of people I didn't know because I had already been gone for years, and the people that I did know, a lot of them didn't recognize me. They were looking at me like, who the hell is this person sitting next to my mother? Because I was there in the front row with the family, so I knew they obviously were thinking, okay, well, this is someone that's very close because they're sitting in the front row with the family, but who are they? And the ones that recognized me, I think they were awkward. They felt kind of awkward with the situation. But there was this one, and I'm not going to name her, Jamaican lady friend of my parents. I never met her. I think she became friends with them after I had left home. So we're at the casket, and my father had a Hindu funeral. My father was Hindu. So, the pundit was there, and they were doing all the Hindu rites, funeral rites, and we were all around the casket because before the body goes for cremation, everyone gathers around, and they're putting ghee on his body and different things on his body, preparing him the traditional way for cremation. Although he went in to the crematory oven, but traditionally it would have been done like on the beach on fire, So anyway, so these things were going on, and we were all crying, and I broke down and started crying, and this bitch leans over and grabs my arm and whispers in my ear, "Come on, straighten up, act like a man." I was like, bitch, if you don't get out my fucking face, I don't even know you. Besides that, this is my father's funeral, and I'm grieving the way I grieve. How dare you tell me in my time of sadness and grief to act like a man? Who the fuck are you? I was, oh my God. And in the sadness, I'm busy crying, and like in my grief and sadness, I was taken aback. I'm like, did I hear this bitch just say what she said? Really? Really? I'll give you a man, bitch, right in your face. I was so mad and angry, and my mom laughs about it now because later on, I was like, who the hell was this? Talking with my mom about this woman and what she said. Come on, straighten up. You need to act like a man. Excuse me? Anyway, if I really had did what I wanted to do, it would have been a fight at that funeral, honey, because it would have been, these earrings would have been coming out, my earrings, and honey, the hair would have been going back, and we would have been fighting, honey. People, I think when it comes to different topics, like, someone being gay or someone being transgender, people really don't think, like, all of that, like, the fact that I'm my father's child, I'm in front of his casket, they're getting ready to cremate him, I'm, like, I'm grieving, I'm very sad, and I'm crying. None of that did she care about. She felt it was more important to lean over, grab my arm, and she grabbed it pretty hard, and whisper in my ear, "You need to straighten up and act like a man." That snubbed everything else. Now, who does that? Who really does that? I mean, come on. Oh, I was doing what I was supposed to do. I was there for my mother and my sister. I was there. I went home, and I was there, and I was giving my support the best way I could. Okay, but and even today, years later, sometimes I'll think of this hussy, and there's so much more because, honey, the stuff that I've heard about her, she's a hot mess. But anyway, yeah, there's times that I think about that incident and I'm like, what the? It stops me in my track. I'm like, she really did do that. Anyway, I just thought I'd share with you all. You all know how I have all my different stories. Honey, I'm full of them. Love, peace, and blessings, guys.